My brother's girlfriend sent me a recording of my family mocking me, saying she's too weak to ever fight back. So I did. When I confronted them at dinner, my mom laughed. "Oh, please, what are you going to do?" I pulled out my phone, hit play, and watched their faces crumble. My brother's girlfriend just smirked. Best dinner ever. I've always been the kind of person who lets things go. Not because I don't care, but because I hate conflict. I avoid it whenever I can. The way I see it, some fights just aren't worth having, especially with family. My mother used to call me the quiet one. My father would say I was too sensitive. My brother, Leo, joked that I was a doormat. But I laughed it off, smiled when they teased me, and let things roll off my back. What else was I supposed to do? They were my family. But sometimes, you don't realize how much people look down on you until you hear it for yourself. And thanks to my brother's girlfriend, I did. It was a Friday afternoon when I got the message. I had just gotten home from work, kicked off my shoes, and was about to make myself a cup of tea when my phone vibrated on the counter. "Tessa, hey, I think you should hear this." I frowned. Tessa and I weren't exactly close, but we were always friendly. She had been dating Leo for almost a year, and she was one of those effortlessly confident people, the kind of woman who knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to say it. I hesitated for a moment before opening the audio file she sent. At first, there was just muffled noise like someone had set their phone down on a table. Then, my mother's voice came through, clear as day. She's just so pathetic. Honestly, it's embarrassing. Laughter. My father. My aunt. My brother. I don't know why she even bothers coming to these dinners. My mother continued, her tone casual, like she was discussing the weather. She just sits there, nodding along like an idiot. Leo snorted. "Yeah, you could probably say it right to her face, and she'd still just sit there smiling." More laughter. I gripped my phone, my stomach twisting. "Oh, please," my mother scoffed. "What's she gonna do?" Silence. Then another round of chuckles, like the very idea of me standing up for myself was hilarious. I stared at the screen, my heart beat so loud in my ears that I barely noticed the second message from Tessa. "Tessa, you deserve better." I read the words over and over again, my throat tightening. I don't know how long I sat there, just staring at my phone, my hands shaking. A part of me wanted to pretend I hadn't heard it, that this was just a misunderstanding, that they didn't mean it that way. But I knew better. They meant every word. And I was done. I spent the next few hours thinking about what to do. I could have ignored it, done what I always did and let it go. But something inside me refused to let that happen this time. So instead of avoiding the situation, I made a decision. That night, we had a family dinner planned at my parents' house. I hadn't even confirmed I was coming yet, but now I knew for sure I wouldn't miss it for the world. I got ready like nothing was wrong. Did my hair. Picked out a nice dress. When I got there, everyone greeted me like they always did. My mother kissed my cheek, my father patted my shoulder, Leo gave me a smirk, and my aunt pulled me into a hug. Like nothing had happened. Like they hadn't just trashed me behind my back. I sat at the dinner table, listening to them talk, laughing at the appropriate moments, all while my phone rested in my lap, the audio file ready to go. My heart pounded, but I kept my face neutral. Then, about halfway through dinner, my mother made an offhand comment about how I was so quiet as always. I smiled, set my fork down, and looked her right in the eye. "Yeah, it's funny," I said, my voice calm. "You were saying something similar earlier, weren't you?" She blinked, clearly caught off guard. "What?" I tilted my head. "You know about me being pathetic?" The table fell silent. My father furrowed his brows. Leo's smirk twitched. My aunt cleared her throat. My mother let out a short laugh. "Oh, please. What are you gonna do?" I held her gaze for a second longer, then reached for my phone. Tapped the screen, hit play, and let them hear themselves. The room filled with their own voices, their own laughter, their own Krell words. I watched as my mother's expression changed, her face draining of color. My father stiffened. My aunt shifted uncomfortably. And Leo just stared, his jaw clenching. The recording ended. Silence. Then a slow clap. I turned to see Tessa, sitting back in her chair, a smirk on her lips. She raised her glass. "Best dinner ever," she murmured. And for the first time in my life, I agreed. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. No one moved. No one spoke. They just sat there, staring at me like I had grown a second head. My mother was the first to break. She scoffed, shaking her head like I was the one acting crazy. "Oh, come on," she said, reaching for a wine glass. "Are we really doing this?" I didn't blink. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "We are." Leo exhaled sharply through his nose, dragging a hand down his face. "Jesus, it was a joke," he muttered. "A joke?" I repeated, tilting my head. "Yes, a joke," my mother said, her tone clipped. "You're being ridiculous." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Ridiculous? You sat there and mocked me." My own family sat around laughing at me, like I was some pathetic little fool. And I'm the one being ridiculous? My father, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke. You're overreacting, he said, not even looking at me. You know your mother. She runs her mouth. It doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything, I repeated slowly, as if testing the words. So, you agree with her? He sighed like I was being a child. That's not what I said. But you laughed, I pointed out. You all did. Leo shifted in his chair, his jaw tight. You really want to make a big deal out of this? He asked, like I was throwing a tantrum over spilled milk. Because if you do, fine. But don't act like you don't know how this family works. I stared at him. What is that supposed to mean? It means, he said, leaning forward, that we joke, we talk SH, and then we move on. That's how it's always been. But you, he gestured at me, exasperated. You sit here acting like some victim, when in reality, you just don't fit in. A sharp pang stabbed through my chest, but I didn't let it show. Wow, I said quietly. You actually said it out loud. Leo scoffed. Oh, don't start. Don't start? My voice rose slightly. Don't start what? A conversation? Am I not allowed to respond? You all sit here and trash me behind my back, but the second I speak up, I'm starting something? My mother set down her glass a little too hard. Enough, she snapped. This is exactly why we don't tell you things. You always make yourself the victim. Always. You have no sense of humor. No backbone. You just… She waved a hand in frustration. You're exhausting. I felt like I had been slapped. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She's right, my father muttered. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. I swallowed against the lump in my throat. So that's it? I asked. I'm supposed to sit here, smile, and pretend none of this happened? Pretend my own family doesn't think I'm a joke? Yes, my mother said bluntly. Something inside me snapped. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't storm out like they probably expected me to. I just changed. I leaned back in my chair and smiled, but it wasn't the kind they were used to. It wasn't soft. It wasn't forced. It was cold. Okay, I said simply. That one word made them shift in their seats. Okay. Leo frowned. What the does that mean? I shrugged. It means you're right. I am done playing the victim. Tessa was watching me now, her smirk gone, replaced by something else, something almost approving. My mother scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. You'll get over it. I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was the one who was weak. I don't think I will, I murmured. The air in the room shifted. And then, without another word, I stood up. I picked up my bag. And I left. I walked out of that house feeling lighter than I had in years. For the first time in my life, I wasn't swallowing my hurt, wasn't forcing myself to smile and pretend everything was fine. I didn't owe them that anymore. But I wasn't done. They thought I'd roll over like I always did. Thought I'd go home, stew in my emotions, and eventually come crawling back, eager to be accepted again. Not this time. If they saw me as weak, then I'd show them just how wrong they were. The first thing I did was cut them off. Not in a dramatic, screaming match kind of way. No, I simply stopped engaging. No calls, no texts, no showing up at dinners or birthdays or any of the family obligations they expected me to attend. At first, they didn't care. A week passed, then 2, then 3, and the only person who seemed to notice was Tessa. Tessa, I have never seen your mom so pissed off. I smirked at my phone, but didn't reply. Then, little things started happening. My mother tried calling once, then twice. I ignored her. She left a voicemail. Deleted it. Leo texted. Leo, okay, we get it. You're mad. Enough now. I left him on read. Then my father. Dad, your mother is upset. You need to call her. No, I didn't. I had spent my entire life being the one who always reached out, who always smoothed things over. It was their turn. And when they realized I wasn't playing the game anymore, the panic set in. One night, a month after the dinner, I got a text from Tessa. Tessa, you home? Me, yeah, why? Tessa, I'm coming over. 20 minutes later, she was on my couch, grinning like she had just won the lottery. You, she said, pointing at me, are officially my favorite person. I raised an eyebrow. Because I ignore my family? Because you flipped the script? She corrected, kicking her feet up. They don't know what to do with themselves. Your mom is losing her mind. Your dad's trying to pretend he doesn't care. And Leo? Oh, Leo is pissed. You've never gone this long without caving before. I sipped my tea, feeling a slow, smug satisfaction settle in my chest. Good, I said simply. Tessa's grin widened. Oh, honey, it gets better. She leaned forward. Your mom is throwing her annual Christmas party next month. You know how she is about appearances. And guess who she's been complaining about nonstop? I didn't need to guess. So, Tessa continued. I was thinking, why don't we give them a little show? I narrowed my eyes. What kind of show? She smirked. The kind that reminds them exactly what they lost. I agreed. Not out of pettiness. Okay, maybe a little out of pettiness, but mostly because I wanted them to see me. The real me. The one they never thought was strong enough to walk away. So, I planned for that Christmas party like I was preparing for war. I showed up in a sleek black dress, hair perfect, makeup flawless. I walked into that house with my head high, confidence radiating from me. And the best part? I brought a date. Not a romantic one. Just a very attractive coworker who owed me a favor and was more than happy to play along. The moment we walked in, my mother's smile faltered. "Darling," she said, her voice high-pitched. "I didn't think you were coming." I smiled. "I know." Leo narrowed his eyes. "Who's this?" I looped my arm through my coworkers. "This is Ryan." Ryan, bless his heart, extended a hand. "Lovely to meet you." My mother shook it stiffly, her gaze flicking between us, clearly trying to figure out what was going on. I mingled. I laughed. I owned that room. And every time my mother tried to get me alone, I just smiled and moved on. Leo finally cornered me near the drinks table. "All right, enough," he muttered. "What the is this?" I sipped my champagne. "What's what?" "This." He gestured to me. "You're acting like none of this matters. Like you don't care." I tilted my head. "I don't." His jaw clenched. "You're still mad." "No," I said, setting my glass down. "I'm done." He blinked. "What?" "I'm done trying," I said. "Done begging for a place in this family. Done letting you all treat me like some joke. You're right, Leo. I don't fit in. And I'm finally okay with that." For the first time in his life, my brother looked genuinely speechless. I smiled. "Merry Christmas." Then I walked away. Tessa caught my eye from across the room, lifted her glass, and mouthed, "Best night ever." And honestly, she was right. I never went back to being the person I was before. Over the next few months, things changed. Not in a dramatic, movie-style way. No big, emotional apologies or heartfelt reconciliations. But the shift was there. At first, my mother kept up her usual tactics, acting like nothing happened, sending passive-aggressive texts, trying to guilt me into coming over. When that didn't work, she switched to playing the victim. "Mom, I don't know why you're being so distant. After everything we've done for you." "Me, I'm just focusing on myself." "Mom, so you're punishing us?" "Me, I'm setting boundaries." That shut her up real quick. Leo, on the other hand, reacted exactly how I expected. Anger, denial, then finally silence. He didn't reach out much, and when he did, it was short, surface level. And honestly, that was fine with me. My father barely acknowledged the shift, which wasn't surprising. He had always been the type to ignore problems and hope they went away. But the thing is, I didn't go away. I built my life without them at the center of it. I poured myself into my career, my friendships, my happiness. And the more I thrived, the more obvious it became to everyone that I had never needed them. I had just been conditioned to think I did. And that was real freedom. The final nail in the coffin came about a year later. I was at a wedding. One of my closest friends was getting married, and I was actually enjoying myself, happy in a way I hadn't been in years. And then, right in the middle of the reception, I got a text from my mother. "Mom, can we talk?" Something about it felt different. No manipulation. No passive aggression. Just small. I stared at it for a moment, considering. And then, I put my phone away, and I went back to living. Because for the first time in my life, I came first. And that was the best ending I could have ever given myself.